Hello, and welcome to ESET's presentation of Ransomware Reality Check, Protecting Your Business Today. My name is Ben Reed, and I'm Senior Technical Content Strategist for ESET North America. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few items related to your viewing experience. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets you can utilize. All of the widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your space. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. The resource list near the top right provides extra assets and links related to ESET that may be useful to you. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget by pressing the Q&A icon at the bottom. And then during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar, we will try to answer these questions live. But if a more complete answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. Finally, an on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately 1 hour after this webcast and can be accessed using the same URL link that was sent to you earlier. So today, we'll be going over what is ransomware, including the history of it, common ransomware infection vectors, best practices related to ransomware prevention, and finally, how ESET keeps you safe from ransomware. First, the basics. What is ransomware? Ransomware is just another type of malware. The unique thing about it, though, is that it is used for extortion. So that means when it's activated, it prevents access to a device or the data on it until the victim pays a fee. It can also have a built-in timer with a payment deadline. Then, if you do not pay by the deadline, you permanently lose access to the data or the fee becomes even higher. There are two main types of ransomware. You have locker ransomware and crypto ransomware. Locker denies access to the entire computer or device and does not actually encrypt any files. And because it's simply blocking access to you utilizing your device, it is more easily removed. But this is where the social engineering portion comes into play. Because while this screen is being displayed, their hope is that they can convince you to pay them, hopefully to remove the screen. This actually functions very similarly to the fake antivirus schemes that were used 10 years ago and still are used somewhat today, where they convince you that your computer is infected and the only way to fix your computer is by utilizing their product and paying them money. Crypto ransomware, on the other hand, does not lock you out from the device, but it prevents access to the actual files or data. Sometimes this involves encryption, but not always. And really, this sort of ransomware is preying on users or companies who do not utilize offline backups. Later on, we'll talk about why offline backups are extremely important rather than just any kind of backups. No matter the ransomware, they both have similar consequences. So this could include things such as pictures, tax returns, and other important information being lost or encrypted or unable to access that data any further. So ransomware, since its initial introduction in 1989 with the AIDS Trojan, has constantly evolved its techniques. From taking certain files off your computer and dropping them in password-protected zip files, to asking you to pay a ransom by sending a text to a premium SMS number, to impersonating fake antivirus or the police or FBI. Now, almost all ransomware utilizes bitcoins for payments to make the creators harder to track. Ransomware has also become more dangerous due to new distribution vectors, such as leveraging exploits or utilizing PowerShell. Now in 2016, it's become even easier for ransomware to run on a device by fully leveraging JavaScript. And it has become even easier for it to spread, as we saw with WannaCry and its utilization of exploits on Windows. And looking through this timeline, you can see ransomware is not something brand new, but something that has existed for a while and has constantly evolved as the threat landscape has changed. Here are the names of some notable ransomware variants that we've seen throughout the years. I am sure you've heard of quite a few of these. And it's important to stress that ransomware is not just a Windows problem, but as you can see from the slide, exists on Android, Mac OS, and Linux. And in some instances, these sort of attacks can be worse, because still today, most people do not protect their Android, Linux, or Mac OS devices, and only protect their Windows devices. That means that if someone deploys a threat on Windows, typically they need to bypass the OS and their endpoint security product. However, on other OSs, they just need to bypass any OS protection that exists due to the lack of endpoint security product being installed. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these ransomware variants in more detail. So the first piece of ransomware occurred in 1989 with a 5.25-inch floppy disk. Yes, some of you might not know what it is, so we have a picture of a floppy disk right there. The disk was called the AIDS Information Introductory Diskette and was mailed to several people. When it was run, it displayed an intro or EULA and gave a quiz on how likely a person was to be infected by the virus based on their activities. Later on, it hid the directory information and encrypted file names on the PC until a $189 license or extortion fee was paid to a P.O. box in Panama, which would then give the user a year's worth of access to their computer. Eventually, the person behind this ransomware was arrested and actually found to previously worked for the World Health Organization dealing with AIDS research. Next, in 2012, Reviton began to spread, which its payload displayed a warning from a law enforcement agency claiming that the computer had been used for illegal activities such as file sharing. And to make this alert seem more legitimate, they actually displayed the computer's IP address in the notice. Variants of this ransomware were localized with different logos based off the different law enforcement organizations in the user's countries. In order to make the payment, rather than using a P.O. box like the AIDS Trojan did back in 1989, they utilized a service called MoneyPack, which could be bought at many pharmacies and grocery stores. In 2013, Cryptolocker burst onto the scene, which utilized very strong encryption. Actually a 2048-bit RSA key pair. After the creation of this encryption key, it uploaded it to their command and control server and began encrypting only certain files on your computer. Then the malware threatened to delete the private key if the Bitcoin payment was not made in 3 days of infection. After the deadline passed, this Bitcoin ransom was then increased to 10 Bitcoins. And it was estimated that at least $3 million was extorted with Cryptolocker prior to it being shut down. So this one was unique because of its introduction of using Bitcoin as the main method for payment. On the Android OS side of ransomware, there are 3 main types. Lock screen ransomware, which constantly brings the ransom window to the foreground in an infinite loop, so you're unable to do anything else on your device because that pop-up keeps coming up. Crypto ransomware, which encrypts files on your device or SD card. And finally, Locker PIN, which changed the PIN code on the device so users were unable to restore access without factory resetting the device or having root access prior to the infection. Back in 2014, SimpleOcker was discovered, and it was unique due to the fact that this malware was location aware. So unlike Reviton, where different variants were coded for the different regions, SimpleOcker automatically displayed content based off where the user's device was. So for instance, in the United States, they received a prompt saying the alert was from the NSA. This ransomware encrypted the contents on the SD card quickly after install. In 2015, on the Android side, we saw an even more nefarious version, which acquired device administrator privileges unknowingly to the user. What the malware would do is it would pop up an activation window that was overlaid over the Trojan's malicious window. So basically it was pretending to be an update for some sort of patch or a normal installation prompt. As the victim clicked through this innocuous looking installation, they also unknowingly activated device administrative privileges in the hidden underlying window. This process is called clickjacking. After the malware received administrative privileges, the ransomware set a brand new PIN code for the lock screen. And then with this new PIN code was a prompt asking users to pay a $500 ransom. What they do not tell you, of course, is the fact that not even the malicious author in this case knew what the PIN code was set to on your device. So after you are infected, the only way to recover the device is to previously have had root access on that Android device. If you did not, your only option was to reset and restore the device to factory settings. KeyRanger, the Mac OS, or previously called OS X ransomware, was unique due to the ransomware actually being embedded into a version of Transmission. For those who do not know, Transmission is a widely used BitTorrent client on OS X. Version 2.9 of Transmission had the KeyRanger ransomware built in. So Transmission, once they found out, quickly prompted all users to remove version 2.9 and install 2.91. Even though the download was only available for 1 day, the big problem with this malware was that it was signed with a legitimate developer certificate. And after infection, the malware lay dormant for 3 days, then popping up requesting a 1 Bitcoin payment in order to decrypt your files. KillDisk was originally discovered in late 2015, and at that point only targeted Windows OSs. However, in 2017, a new variant renders Linux machines unbootable. After encrypting the files and requesting a large ransom, then your Linux machine was unable to boot. In fact, the ransom on KillDisk is set at 222 Bitcoins, which as of this week is around $600,000. In 2015, ransomware and the deployment of it became even easier with the rise of Ransomware as a Service. Now, from a dark web website, someone can choose the type of ransomware they want, the amount of the ransom to ask for, and additional notes and features. After they do so, they're provided with everything they need for a successful ransomware attack. This new Ransomware as a Service actually is a full-blown service where they provide support, troubleshooting, to make sure the product the customer has purchased was very happy with the service they received. And it's important to stress that utilization of these sorts of things requires no tech knowledge at all. And finally, in 2017, we saw WannaCryptor, also known as WannaCry Strike. And WannaCry infected Windows machines. And unlike typical ransomware, that it might infect 1 or 2 people in the company, if they both open an infected email or website, this quickly spread through the company, infecting multiple people or entire organizations. And the reason it was able to spread or function like a worm of old was due to the inclusion of the Eternal Blue exploit. And the Eternal Blue exploit was one of the NSA exploits released weeks prior to the WannaCry attacks. And the future of ransomware, as more and more people acquire smart devices, smart cars, and smart homes, and enjoy the convenience of internet-connected devices, malicious actors may begin attacking these devices directly and holding them for ransom. So if you lock someone out of their house, then they're unable to utilize anything contained inside of it. Rather than the ransomware today, you're only locking them from using their computer. But they could also do this to any internet-connected devices. For instance, they could restrict access to your car, your house, or your thermostat until the ransomware has been paid.